to the UR-118 module that covers the graphical front panel. In this module, we'll cover the following topics: the physical layout, the product information page, single line diagram, the annunciator, metering tabs, the menu, the event record, home page configuration, step-by-step instructions to upgrade to the graphical front panel. We'll take a review of the resources, where to find additional information about the graphic front panel, and finally a recap of the course. So let's get started. Welcome to the UR-118 module that covers the graphical front panel. In this module, we'll cover the following topics: the physical layout, the product information page, single line diagram, the annunciator, the metering tab, access to the menus, the event recorder, the home page, and step-by-step instructions to upgrade to the graphical front panel, and finally a recap. Here we have the graphical front panel. The communication ports are shown here. Port 1 is the USB local access used to communicate between a UR and a port running the InterVista UR setup. Port 2 is access for user authentication records retrieval. Next, we have 14 LED indicators. The upper 5 LEDs are fixed non-programmable status indicators. They are the in-service, trouble, test mode, trip, and alarm LEDs. The remaining 9 are user programmable event cause. The event will be displayed as either a voltage, current, frequency, or other, and which phase was affected: A, B, C, or ground neutral. These are factory defaulted to what you see here. The push buttons are membrane type. There are 10 side push buttons. They perform various functions depending on the displayed page, such as switchgear controls. There's 5 tab push buttons. They navigate through the page hierarchy, and on some pages activate other actions. We have 16 user push buttons with 8 physical and 8 virtual assigned. There are assigned function buttons. So reset clears all latch LED indicators and target messages. It can also be used to acknowledge conditions. There are assigned function buttons. The reset clears all latched LED indicators and target messages and can also be used to acknowledge conditions. The home activates the home page, which is the root page. The page displays product information by default and is configurable. Escape exits the menu you're in without saving and navigates you to the previous page. And navigational keys, up, down, left, and right. These push buttons move the selector among the options on a page. The enter activates the selection on the display or stores updated settings. In this section, we'll take a look at the display features and the product information screen. This is the home page that is programmed with the product information screen that provides us information about the relay, such as relay ID, order code, serial number, firmware version, Ethernet communication configuration, and remaining connections. The first tab push button is used to access the single line diagrams. We can view up to 5 screens of single line diagrams. The next push button allows us to access the annunciator pages. There are up to 8 annunciator panels that can be viewed. Next, the next tab push button is used to access the metering pages, where we can view up to 5 tabular metering pages. The next tab is used to access the event recorder. And finally, the menu tab gives us access to the actual values, settings, commands, and target menus via the front panel. Next, let's discuss the icons at the top. The first icon is a security indicator showing how many people are logged in, including local and remote users. When no one is logged in, the lock is closed in green. The lock is red when 1 or more users are logged in. If login is not required, an icon does not appear. The next icon identifies the active settings group between 1 and 6. This icon appears when an abnormal enunciator alarm is present. You would navigate to the enunciator panel for details. When there are no alarms, the icon is not displayed. Even when you acknowledge or reset an alarm, the icon displays as long as the condition remains. For example, a breaker trouble alarm displays. You acknowledge it, but the icon remains because the breaker trouble remains. The next icon is the active target symbol. So you view error messages by pressing the Menu tab push button and then accessing the Targets menu. In this section, we'll show you how to program the single line diagrams, or SLDs. The home page is user configurable. If the single line diagram is not your home page, you can select the push button associated with the single line diagram. Here you will see up to 5 user configurable single line diagrams. Each can be configured to show graphically the arrangement of a portion of the power system, the status of circuit breakers, and ground and disconnect switches, metering, and status values. Each single line diagram also enables control of the displayed power system device. Now, each single line diagram is an empty page by default, is not displayed if it is empty. All menus in the graphic front panel are programmed using the InterVista Setup program. To configure the single line diagram, we begin under Product Setup, Graphical Panel, and finally select Single Line Diagram Editor. The single line diagram looks like this with a toolbar that consists of static devices such as lines, bus, ground, symbols for generator, motor, and AC sources, IEEE and IEC symbols for transformers, reactors, capacitors, current transformer, voltage transformer. We have active devices that consist of breakers, switches, and screen attributes such as metering, status, text, and push button configuration. To create a circuit, come into your toolbar, select your item, click on it once, move your cursor onto the canvas, click it again to deposit it. To change the properties, you can double click on it. It'll give you the choice to select a breaker that's available in your relay. You can select the orientation. I'll change mine by 90 degrees. We can indicate which color will be considered open, green or red, and which button we're going to be used to enable control of the relay. So we have our choices of the buttons that are available. Let's do this again. We'll grab a second one, select it once. And we'll draw a line between the two. And I'll bring in a vertical line. Bring in show a feeder, and we'll bring in another line again. And this time I'm going to bring in a switch. And we'll drop in our ground. And there's how you create our circuit. The same thing with the switch. If you double click on it, you have your choice of switches that are available in the relay, your orientation, what color would be considered to be open, and which button will be used to control it, to enable control on it. So, and then we can go ahead and save this. So next thing we'll take a look at is the metering. So bring it over and we'll double click on it, change the properties. It allows us to select a specific parameters. Let's make this first one source 1 IARMS. You can see our unit, scale factor, multiplier, how we're going to set up the format, then the text colors. Alright, we can expand on this. Let's grab another one. Let's do the voltage. let's grab one more. And we'll get that one will be the frequency. And this is how we can have the metered values displayed on the single line diagram. The status icon can be used to add a status onto the canvas as well. You can come in here, we'll select any digital signal. So in this case, let's go ahead and select out of service, so that when this signal is active, we can actually have this displayed. And if it's not active, we can just leave it blank. We want to put a second signal in here, we can. It's different second status. And let's say something like that. Put a text in here again. Reclosed, blocked. We'll leave this off. When we go live with the relay, then it'll show us the status of these different conditions. The T icon gives us an opportunity to add some text to our single line diagram. Double clicking on it allows us to add some text. You're limited on the number of characters you can enter here. So by double clicking on this, we can go in, we can change the font size and the color, so you can make it a little bit larger. The PB icon allows us to configure the side buttons to be additional push buttons. So in the list here, we have our first 5 are on the left side of the graphic panel, and then we have the second 6 to 10 are on the right side. We can go in here and assign it to these other push buttons. And when you go into this other menu, into the push button menu, it allows you to go in and configure what the functionality of these push buttons are going to be. So in a case like this, where we come down into, if we come down into user programmable push buttons, we have our 16 push buttons, and it allows us to come in here and change these from disabled to self-resetting latched, and give it a name as well, and all these other functionalities are available within the push button function itself. Before we continue on, we should have a discussion about what these 3 numbers represent here. The first one is called edit mode. Edit mode allows us to come into the canvas and make any changes that we wish to do. Number 2 is the overview mode. So this allows us to see what the status is of the individual breakers, the switches. We can see how the layout of the screen is going to look. And number 3 is control mode preview, which allows us to see the control features that are available, and any push buttons have been assigned to this particular page. So breaker 1 will give us access to breaker 1. Breaker 2 push button will give us access to breaker 2. Switch 1 will give us access to controlling switch 1. And then breaker 9 and 10 have been assigned to doing manual closes. So this now will also appear on the front of the relay. Now, one thing I wanted to bring to your attention: if this screen has question marks on your breakers and on your switch, that basically means that we do not have the breaker and switch configuration either configured properly or enabled. So it's very important that we go in here and actually go in and turn these on. So let's go ahead and configure the breakers. The breakers are located under System Setup. So here we're using breaker 1. We've got it configured, it's enabled, we've got some configurations on, everything's programmed correctly. A little bit of a discussion about what this is indicating here. To assist us in our presentation here, we've set up a latch to show us the operations of the breaker. So we'll go into that right now. So the latch is located under the Flex Logic, and latch 1 is associated with breaker 1. Latch 2 is associated with breaker 2. Latch 3 is associated with switch 1. So what I've done here is made a reset dominant and gone in and used this command, breaker 1 on command for the set, and a breaker 1 off command for the off. Same thing repeated for breaker number 2 and repeated again for switch 1. So this is the circuit that we're using. So there's our latch 1 for breaker 1. And then for breaker number 2, we're using latch number 2. Let's go into the switches as well. And the switch, I have it enabled, and I'm using latch number 3 to show it closed, and latch 3 off to show it is opened. So let's go ahead back to the screen. This is our active screen. So what we're going to do now is we'll switch over to the front panel to show you the operation. Before we get to the front panel, here's a little review of our settings. So we have, first of all, we have our push buttons enabled. We have push button 9 and push button 10 that have been enabled. Their function in the circuit breakers is going to be to open and close the breaker. We have our status feedback for the breaker being closed and open via latch 1. Latch 1 is being programmed by using commands breaker 1 on command for the set, and breaker 1 off command is the reset. Now here we have the front of the relay with our configuration. To go in and do any control, we're going to press the enable control. Then we're going to see this kind of a screen. So our choices here are controlling breaker 1 or breaker 2 or the switch 1 operation. We assigned push button 4 to be user push button 9 and push button 5 to be user push button number 10. And in the earlier configuration, we had configured those to be manual open and manual close, and we'll talk more about that in a moment, how it's configured. If we want to go ahead and control the breaker number 1, we're going to select the button associated with it, and we'll see this kind of a screen. So we have choices to either cancel the operation, go ahead and open, close. There's a tag, a substitute, and bypass that we've programmed so far. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. The tag, if you select it, gives you an opportunity to inhibit the operation, both local and remote control of the breaker. The substitute replaces it with the manually operated value. And the bypass, once you enable it, it provides blocking of the open or closing of that particular breaker. So we come back here, we can go ahead and select the close, and it comes back and asks for a confirmation. You select confirm, and then the breaker status changes. Now, similarly, we had the user push button 9 set up as the breaker open. So with that selected, we're able to open the status of the breaker, and selecting user push button number 10, which is assigned to close the breaker, gives us the status of the breaker closed. So a quick note, the open and close buttons are available when the push button control here is enabled. If this is switched to disabled, then the open and close tabs are not present. The controllable elements, the letters T, S, B, R, and X, next to the controllable element have the following meanings. So T is the element is tagged. Local and remote control of the device are inhibited, both open and closed. Chirping is unaffected unless additional logic has been configured. The S is the position indication of the device is substituted with the manually entered value. The B is basically where blocking an open or close command has been bypassed. The R means the auto reclose is enabled and it's not blocked. And X indicates the device is out of service and control is not available. In this section, we'll review the configuration of the enunciator. The enunciator pages can be selected from the graphical front panel. The enunciator panels are used to find. Here we have defined 3 screens. The first one is named stations alarms, actual values, and relay alarms. There are 3 lines of text in each data item. There's a maximum of 96 data items that can be programmed. The number of screens is based on your layout choice. Here we have selected a 3x4, which is 3 rows by 4 columns, that will give us up to 8 screens. The other choices are 4x6, which gives us up to 4 screens, and 6x8, which gives us up to 2 screens. Let's take a look at the programming in InterVista. The enunciator setup screen looks like this. We have 96 indicators. The page gives us an opportunity to choose the layout and to enter the page names. Using the 3x4 layout, we have 12 indicators associated with the first page name station alarms, the next 12 indicators associated with actual values, and the next 12 indicators associated with the relay alarms. The content involves 3 choices. The alarm, which are digital signals, actual values that are metered values, and mixed where you have an alarm and an indicator into one. Alarm types, we have knowledgeable, so we have to acknowledge or reset and latch an alarm. We can use the arrow buttons on the graphical front panel and press the enter button to clear it. If the alarm is present, you cannot reset the alarm. We have a self-reset, which will track the state of an input operand. The alarm turns on when the trigger activates and off when the trigger clears. And of course, latched, the alarm remains latched and can be reset using the reset button. When the content is alarms inputs, they can be any digital signal available in the relay. There are 3 lines of text that can be added to each data item. When the actual values is selected as content, the first line is the metered value, and lines 2 and 3 are the text that you enter. You also need to select your actual values parameters. Mix provides the results from the combination of the alarm and actual value parameters. Here we have the enunciator screen set up, and what we're going to do is we're going to set up the mixed. So here it allows us to go in and select any digital signal that we choose. I'll select the phase under voltage 1 operate. The first line will have the meter values. This is my text that I'm going to enter in when the alarm is active. And I need to go in and select configure to select my parameter, so I can use any actual value, metered value that's available inside the relay. You can set, it will automatically default to units, your scale factor, multiplier, your format of your data. And you can also indicate where you want that data to be displayed. Line 1, 2, or 3. I'll leave it in line 1. And also the alarms. So I've selected it to be in a blue text. To see how this is going to look before you display it on your graphical front panel, you can come up to preview, and this will display your 3 different pages. So my station alarms, these are the conditions that I've placed. The next page, I've got my metered values, and then this is my mixed condition. And the last one is my relay alarms. So here we have a live a presentation of the results on our front panel. Here we have our three different annunciators, station alarms, actual values, and relay alarms. If we create a fault condition, so with our fault condition just being displayed, the under voltage condition has been cleared. The first thing you'll need to do is to use the navigational buttons to select the appropriate panel. Select enter to acknowledge, and then go ahead and press the reset button to reset the condition. Escape will clear the frame. In this section, we'll review the metering tab and how to configure it. The metering pages can be selected from the home page of the graphical front panel by selecting this button. The metering editor is located under Product Setup, Graphical Panel, and finally, Metering Editor. The metering editor is an actual values editor. It creates pages of actual values for the graphical front panel. There are 5 pages to select from in a pull-down menu that are user configurable. Each page can be labeled. Here this page has been labeled as Incomer 1. The layout indicates the matrix of cell arrangement that will be displayed on the graphical front panel. So 6x4 means that there will be 6 rows and 4 columns. So cell 1, 1 is row 1, column 1. And this indicates the top left location on the graphic display. The content allows the user to select between actual values, status, or text. If we select actual, then the next step is to select the configure button. The configure tab looks like this. The parameter field allows you to select any analog values such as metered values, flex analog, analog goose, etc. The units are defaulted to the parameter type but can be modified. The scale factor selection is either none or kilo. The multiplier is used in conjunction to the value displayed. The number formatting is based on the number of integers and the number of decimals. When the content is configured for status, you'll indicate in the status index which one of the 16 user-defined inputs will be used. The status index selection refers to one of the 16 user-defined inputs. In the first example, we are monitoring the status of a contact input. In the second example, we are monitoring the status of the timed over current operate flag. In the text column, you can enter the text that you would like to see when the associated item is active. The off text is the text you would like to see when the associated item is inactive. Font is the font size that will be displayed on the graphic displays. The choices are 16, 18, or 20. The text color is the color of the characters in each cell, whereas the background color is the background color of each cell. The preview screen gives you a visual appearance of your configuration. In the preview screen, we can see the configuration that we can expect to see on the graphic display after the settings have been loaded into the UR. Just keep in mind that this is only a layout and does not display live data. So in this screen, we can also see the matrix arrangement. Here, cell 1, 1 shows the current, cell 1, 2 shows voltage, and so on. Now, Incomer 1 will be the name of the tab on the metering screen and also the reference at the top left. To programming the graphical front panel, you need to go into Settings, Product Setup, Graphical Panel, coming to the metering editor, and we're going to program in the contact input number 1, which I have labeled as feed 1. And in the second position, I'll put in the phase TLC operate.
flag. So here we have 5 pages. I'll stick with the first one. We'll start off with the first one to be the status. And in the first position, cell 1-1, I'll put in the first item. And then here when it's closed, I'll put in this text. If it's open, or if it's inactive, then I'll use breaker open. I'll increase the font to the maximum size, and let's do the same thing with the next one. Do the status again. We'll use the TOC operate flag. Number 2. And we'll just give it a name such as TOC operating. Once again, put up to the maximum size. And next we'll configure, let's go down to cell 2-1. We'll go ahead and configure some actual values. I'll increase the font size again. This time we'll configure IA. So I'll come down into the screen here at the parameters. We'll search down for source IA RMS. We have a choice of amps or scale factor. Here's what it looks like if you use the kilo. If you want to use the multiplier, this is what it looks like. And we'll just leave everything else at default. And the next thing I'll do is the voltage. Same thing, we'll increase the font. We are there. And we can go ahead and do a preview so we can see what we're going to have. Forgot one thing. Forgot to change the name here. We'll just call this, let's give it a name such as Incomer 1. And you can see how that'll change. So our background color and then our font color. And now let's go ahead and save that. So we'll go into the metering tab, and here's the tab that we created using the metering editor. We called it Incomer 1, and here we have our different cells that we assigned. Cell 1-1 was the breaker, the contact input status. Cell 1-2 was the time over current. Cell 2-1 is our current. Cell 2-2 is our voltage. As I close contact input 1, you can see the status of that. And if I create an overcurrent condition, this message appears.
In this section, we'll review the menu tab and its features. The menu button pages can be selected from the home page of the graphical front panel. That gives us access to actual values, settings, commands, and targets. In the menu screen, we have our 4 different menus that we can go into: actual values, settings, commands, and targets. Actual values are just that. We can see the status of our digital signals. Escape brings us back out. Metering. Take us into our metering screens. Records. So we can go into fault reports, go into oscillography, so we can see if it's been triggered or not. We can also trigger an oscillography from here by selecting enter and changing it from no to yes.
Pressing enter. Under settings, to enter data, we have two types of keyboards. We have a numeric keyboard that allows us to go ahead and make some changes. So if I enter in 1000, select save, those settings have now been changed. We also have an alphanumeric keyboard. So if I want to change the name of the source from source 1 to something like, pressing enter brings up the cursor. We've got our numbers as well. So I'll call this source 345 kV. And then we can save that as well. We can also execute tests from the front keyboard. So everything that we can normally do through the software, we can also do from here. Renaming contact inputs. Using the keyboard, we can adjust debounce time using the numeric keyboard, and then we can also go in and change the logic via the keyboard as well. The other thing we could look at is the active targets from the front by scrolling down the targets, pressing enter, and viewing the display.
In this section, we'll review the features of the event record button, which involves getting access to the event recorder or historian. The event record button can be selected from the home page of the graphical front panel to access the contents of the event recorder.
In the events record screen, you're going to use your navigational buttons to go through and select. You have your page up, which will take you to the top. Your page down will take you down to the bottom. If you want to see what the delta is between two specific messages, then what you can do is mark one with the green, scroll down to the other one, and you can mark it with the other color, and then at the top here in the top right, you'll see the delta between the blue and the green.
In this section, we'll show you how to configure the home page, rolling mode, and configuration navigation menus. The home page button, when selected, brings the user to a user-selected home page. The screen displayed here is the product information screen and is a choice of many different displays that are available for selection. The home page is accessible underneath the graphical panel. Double-clicking on the home page brings us to this screen. Selecting in the pull down gives us the choice of our factory default of product information and any of the screens that were created. On the screen, we can also select the date format and also the time format. The rolling mode, what it does is allows us to program in what screens we would like to see the front panel scrolling through after no push buttons have been pressed. So after this time has elapsed, it will begin to scroll through this number of pages, whatever you select, and your choices of the different screens. The automatic enunciator recall, if this is enabled, will automatically disable the rolling screen and jump straight to the enunciated panel with the abnormal alarm on it. Another feature that we have here is the screensaver intensity. So after this amount of time, whatever has been programmed here, the intensity to save the screen will be reduced to this amount of intensity. The last thing on the list is our configurable navigation. This screen allows us to set up specific conditions to select our individual pages. So we click on the pull down, it gives us the ability to go to whichever page that we have programmed and to display it on this specific condition. In this section, we'll discuss how to upgrade from either the UR Basic display or the UR Enhanced display to the UR Graphical panel. The purpose of this video is to show you how easy it is to convert from a basic display or an enhanced display to the graphic front panel. We'll show the items that need to be selected and which items need to be updated and where to find the part number. Next, we'll walk you through the steps to update the hardware. And finally, updating the settings file prior to writing it back to the UR relay. To begin, let's focus on the build of materials and the items that need to be ordered. We'll focus on the front panel, the CPU module, and the power supply module. When ordering these items, you'll need to gain access to the online store. The store can be accessed from the GE Grid Solutions homepage at this link. Then you can select store, or you can go directly to the store using this link. In the online store search engine, you're going to enter UR panel-BGR. Once you're there, you will select the graphical front panel that meets your needs. You're going to select things such as the model type, the language, and the mounting. So here at the online store, this is where the screen that it's going to bring you to. You're going to select Buy Now. And in here, you have the option to go through and select your model type. So here, when we select in the pull down, you can see our different applications or different model types of the universal relay. The first one's to B30, B90. They're in alphabetical order all the way down to the T60. So you would select accordingly. I'm going to select the F60. You're going to select your language in the next field. And the faceplate options, there's only one. You're going to select your horizontal or vertical mount. And the last field is non-selectable as well. There you have it. And so this is the order number that you're going to select. If you were going for, say, an N60, then you would select the N60 and you would see that the order code is just a little bit different. The CPU module selection, the UR graphical front panel only works with the 9T, 9U, or 9V CPU modules, and you must have this connector. If you don't have this connector, you'll need to order the new 9T, 9U, or 9V CPU module types. In the online store, you're going to search for your relay type and UR CPU. So for example, you're going to put in F60 UR CPU, or another example of N60 UR CPU. Here you'll be able to select the firmware, the language, the CPU module type, and software options, and etc. After entering the F60 UR CPU into the search engine, we'll select Buy Now. And here we'll have a choice to go in and select our different choices. We have our CPU module. This we can't change. The firmware version will be 7.6 or higher. The languages are as shown. The CPU type, we have T, U, and V. The mounting, horizontal or vertical, and of course you have a choice here of whether you want harsh environmental coating or not. The software, When you select on choose, it gives you the choice of your different additional software options, things like 61850, cybersecurity, PRP, so forth, so on. So if I select something like 61850, you can see the additional order code changes to 03. And up here it also changes to 03. As far as this CPU user interface, this is the configuration of the front panel. And because we're going with the graphical panel, we want to leave it as the letter E as an echo. Power supply module. Verify your power supply module is type S. If you have a high voltage power supply module type 1H or RH, it must be replaced with the SH model. If you have a low voltage power supply module type 1L or RL, it must be replaced with the SL model. If you need to order the type S power supply module, you can search for it in the online store and search for UR-PWR. So let's go ahead and select the power supply module. Select Buy Now, and let's go through our choices. There's nothing to change here in the power supply type. The power supply, this is for your control voltage. So there are two levels. There's a high voltage level and a low voltage level for your control voltage choices. And the mounting, this is for the relay mounting, whether you have a horizontal or a vertical mounting relay. So it's either an A or B. The A is the horizontal and the B is the vertical. Now, these power supplies also come with the harsh environmental coating as a standard feature. This concludes the part ordering portion. This video will take us through the steps to convert the F60 enhanced front panel with this order code to an F60 graphical front panel with this order code. So the graphical front panel upgrade procedure will be the same regardless of the UR type. The part numbers of the front panel, CPU module, and power supply module will depend on your relay configuration. We'll convert an F60 with a U-type CPU to a V-type CPU module, and of course the enhanced display with push buttons will be converted to the graphical display. Let's take a look at our bill of materials. We have the F60 graphical front panel, part number F60 F6P-3EH BGR, which includes the F60 front panel, a locking bracket, a hinge bracket, and 4 hex nuts. The F60 CPU module, part number F6M-9VH-03E, where 03 is the software option for 61850. If there's no options, it would be 00E. And finally, the high voltage control power supply UR-SHA. Before we can begin with the hardware upgrade, first thing we need to do is save the settings. So let's go to our device, we'll right click on our mouse, and we'll add the device to the offline window. Select receive. Answer yes. Now that this has been saved, now we can continue on to the hardware. The next step is to verify that the control power has been removed and the universal relay is powered down. Disconnect the RJ45 connector and disconnect the ground strap. You'll have to apply pressure to the center of the connector to release the clasp. Turn the UR to the left to gain access to the left side, which is the hinge side. Remove these 4 Phillips screws and remove the front panel and the hinge assembly. Next, let's turn the relay clockwise, and on the right side, on the latch side, remove these 4 screws and remove the locking bracket. Attach a new bracket with part number 1001-0183 stamped on it using the same screws. Now the difference between this piece and the original is the additional guide pin. Next, let's verify and or replace the required UR modules. Install the Type S power supplies and install the new CPU module with the additional connector.
Now, there's a note here. It's recommended to use both handles when extracting or inserting these modules. Next, we'll need to attach the new hinge bracket, part number 1001-0182, to the graphical front panel using the 4 hex nuts with tooth washers. Use a hex driver or socket size 9mm or 11/32. Next, we'll attach the new hinge bracket and graphical front panel to the chassis with 4 Phillips screws. Inside, we can reattach the ground strap and the graphical panel interface cable. With this completed, we can go ahead and apply control power to the universal relay. With the relay powered up, you'll notice that the order code on the home page shows the part number for the CPU module. We'll need to perform the update order code procedure for the CPU to recognize the modules in your UR chassis and to display the correct order code. To perform the update order code procedure starting at the home page, you will need to press the menu tab button. Once you're in this screen, you're going to press the down arrow key until you get down to commands, and then you're going to press enter. In the new menu, you're going to press the down arrow until you get to relay maintenance, then press enter. Then once again, press the down arrow until you get to update order code ? No. Press the enter button and you'll get this new screen. It's going to ask you if you want to update the order code. You're going to use the menu, the navigational down arrow to change it to yes. And then you're going to press the enter key. Now, what will happen after this is the relay will reboot. After we finish rebooting, the order code should match the UR configuration. The next thing we'll need to do is to come in here and we're going to load the settings back into the relay, but there's a couple of things that we need to do first. First, we need to have the software update what it thinks it's connecting to. So let's go to the device setup and let's just go in here and read the order code again so it updates the information based on this IP address. There we can see the new order code. Select OK to update the software. Now, with this updated, we can take a look at what the order code is. Now, we're going to go in and we're going to convert the original setting that we saved earlier. Let's keep the original configuration. Let's make a copy of it. So let's right click on it and let's make a duplicate and let's work with the duplicate. So here you can see copy of the feeder, and let's go ahead and convert this one. Gives you a little message here. Do you want to start? Yes. So the only thing we're going to do is we're going to change the order code here to match what is here. So V and I believe the rest is the same. One other thing that we need to make sure is that the version number matches what's currently in the relay. So I have to come in and change this as well. Last thing, select convert. Here's a list here of all the changes. You can review this at your leisure. And the last thing left to do is to write the settings into the relay. So here's our copy. Write settings to device, or you can drag and drop. So let's just do it. Let's do this, right settings to device. Select your device, click on send. Yes. Settings have been updated successfully. Select yes to clear it. And you'll need to go in and just verify your settings. Now that we've got the settings loaded into the relay, let's go ahead and verify the operation. Let's go into targets. Let's see if there's any errors. This is just one configuration here under product setup called installation. Change it from not programmed to programmed. And that should remove any errors and alarms that were located in the targets. Now, just a note, there's one thing you should be aware of is that the 48 LEDs and the user push buttons and the 16 configurable push buttons and the user definable displays are now part of the graphical panel. So now you have an opportunity to go in and configure the metering editor, the annunciator panel, and determine what you want to be using for your user definable displays.
In this section, we'll describe where to find more details about the graphic front panel. In the UR manuals, you can find further details about the graphic front panel. There is a brief description in section 4.2.1.3. In section 5.3.3 describes all the function and features available in the graphic front panel. Let's recap what we've covered in this module. The graphic front panel now uses a USB Type-B connection between the computer and the UR. The first 5 LEDs, known as the status LEDs, are fixed and cannot be altered. The 9 event LEDs are user definable and color can be selected between orange, red, and green. The push buttons are membrane type. Your 18 push buttons are user configurable, whereas the 5 tab push buttons along the bottom gain you access to the single line diagram that has up to 5 screens, annunciator that simulates an annunciator panel with up to 96 data items that can be displayed on a maximum of 8 pages, 5 metering pages that can have up to 144 items per page, easy access to the contents of the event recorder, and menu pages that give us access to the actual values, settings, commands, and target screens with an alphanumeric and numeric keyboard for data entry. We showed you how easy it is to upgrade from either the basic or enhanced front panel, which is field upgradable with a designated power supply and CPU module, and an application-specific graphic panel, and finally, the ability to select the home page and screens to scroll through when the UR is idle and which screen to display in the event of a condition. This brings us to the end of this module. Hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for watching.